I quit my job after working in the corporate environment for 5 years when I was on £75,000 a year. But the crazy thing is, when I started working that job, if you told me I would be on £75,000 a year, I would have been over the moon. There were reasons to why I left, and I want to share those with you. I started my own company, and I'll tell you how I got on with that as well. Well, what was the reason why I decided to leave once I was making £75,000 a year? You know, I still remember when I got my first job in recruitment, and that is exactly how I was making my £75,000 a year. I was working a job in recruitment where my salary was about 45,000, and I was making about 25,000 pounds commission on top of that. I remember when I first got a job in recruitment, I think I was about 21 years old, and I was on a 19,000 pounds basic salary. With commission, I made about 30,000 pounds a year, and I was over the moon. I had, you know, so much money at the time. But when I first started working in recruitment, I was making 19,000 pounds as a basic salary at the age of 21 years old. And I made commission, and I got to about 32,000 pounds in my first year. Over the moon, by the way. I didn't really have responsibility. I didn't have a wife, didn't have a kid. And so it felt like I had so much money. But obviously with time, you start realizing money goes out on things. Things happen. We call it that, don't we? We call it, you know, the boiler messed up, the tires messed up, you know, something went wrong in the month. And every month we tell ourselves we're going to save a certain amount of money, but that never really happens. And even if we save for 1 month or 2 months, well, something goes wrong and we have to spend a lot more money on that one thing. Well, that started to happen at 22, 23, 24. Things started to go wrong. And when things go wrong, obviously you don't end up saving money. Something messed up with a car where I had to pay 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. I still remember it. And I remember it was one of my biggest months, and I made about 5,000 pounds in 1 month, but I had to spend 3,000 pounds fixing my car. And so, you know, we know these things happen in life, and with the cost of living and everything going up, actually, have our salaries gone up as they should have? It's a question I guess none of us can really wholeheartedly answer, right? But at that age, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a child, and I guess I started to realize once the tax started to go out, I wasn't really making that much money. On 40,000 pounds a year, I was making 2,506 pounds, roughly, because back then it would have been a little bit up or down. And, you know, when I started seeing some progression, when I got to 50,000 pounds, it was 2,998 pounds. But the problem here isn't the fact that obviously I'm making another 400-500 pounds. The problem actually was the amount of effort that I was putting in to get my salary from 40,000 to 50,000 was a lot. I mean, it was taking me at least a year. And so the year after, I would put in even more effort, and I would say, well, I need to make even more money. And well, I'd make another 400 pounds, because 50 to 60,000 pounds is another 400 pounds, right? And the issue then being is when you're going up from 60 to 70, again, it's 400 pounds. The issue though here is, how much effort are we putting in to get to our next 10K, the 10K after? It's a lot of effort. It takes a year. I mean, it took me from 21 until 25 to get to 75,000 pounds a year. But I would say that's extraordinary for a 25-year-old to be making 75K a year. And of course, I'm grateful. And of course, at the time, I was very, very grateful. But the issue here is I realized at 25 years old, the taxes that I was having to pay, the amount I was actually being left with wasn't as much as I thought. I think this is a big problem that people end up facing. When they get to 40, 45, 50 years old, that's when they get to the 75, 80, 85. But at that point, it's too late because you have a house, mortgage, rent, you know, you've got kids, you've got too much outgoing. You can't actually risk starting a business. You can't risk doing something. And so at that point, when I realized at 25 years old that I'm making 75K a year, but I'm not actually making that much, that's when, well, alarm bells started ringing. And that was actually the thing. Because when I was making 60,000 pounds, I thought, let me just work extremely hard. Let me work my backside off. Let me try to make as much money as I possibly can working this job. And bearing in mind, I was blessed to be working a job where I can make commission. So I'd work my backside off, and I promise you guys, 12-hour days, you know, 13 hours days, coming in the morning, leaving in the night, and really working my backside off. At the end of the month, I got £400 extra, where I would maybe put in an extra 100, 200 hours, right? And that is the problem. That actually, when you look at the amount of hours I was putting in and the return I get because of the taxes going out, because of deductions going out, I wasn't being left with a lot. Then was the problem. So that's when I decided to leave. But the crazy thing is I was actually getting married the month after I decided to leave my job. But I knew if I don't leave my job today, I'm going to have a bigger responsibility of having a family at some point. So if I don't leave my job and start my own business, then I'm gonna be in a huge pickle. And that is the day I decided to leave my job, when I got my pay slip of, the 75K equivalent of how much I made in that month. That's when I decided I had to leave. I had to do something for myself, because I could see a ceiling, and well, I didn't want to see a ceiling. I wanted to be able to achieve much more than I possibly could. So, well, look, I started my own recruitment company. I had been working in a recruitment job for 5-6 years. I then started my own recruitment company. I started from my living room. I went on and, I have made many videos about this, to be fair, but, month 3, we were making 7,000-8,000 a month. So just after 3 months, I was actually making more than I was making working a job. And actually, when I started my business, all I wanted to do was make just enough where I don't have to go work a job. And that's exactly where the mindset, it changed. I realized I had to do, go over and beyond, and I was capable of achieving more. But the only time I realized I was able to achieve more is when I actually got out the matrix, the rat race, when I got out the job. Then I realized I'm actually capable of doing something, but I just never put my mind to it. And so what I guess I would say to you guys is, if you're in that situation of, working a job, turning up every day, you're putting in the effort, but you're not seeing the same returns, it might be a point not to leave your job. I think that was very rash of me, and I wouldn't advise that to you guys, but at least say to yourselves, you know what? Let me start something in the evenings. Let me start something on the weekends. Try to do something. It goes a long way. So hopefully this makes sense to you, and you can think about at least doing something on the sides in the evenings and the weekends, because, well, even 75K a year sometimes isn't enough. And the problem with this is, most of us will turn up to work, we'll go work Monday to Friday, we'll live for the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we'll have our little chill out sessions, or whatever you want to call it. Monday, we're back at work again. Friday, we live our lives. And, if I ask you the question now and say, how long have you been working a job? And if it's been 5, 6, 7 years, or whatever it's been, and ask yourself, how many days do you remember where you have been at work or worked a job? How many days do you actually remember? Most of you don't remember any days. Most of you don't remember more than 2 or 3 days of full days at work. And that's exactly what you're creating. You're not creating memories. It's not actually financially good for you. You're just living a cycle of comfort. You're in a comfortable environment, and you're not even trying to get out of that comfort. And so if you are now in a situation where you're seeing good money, you're going to be making that promotion, ask yourself the question, have you actually seen how much more money you're going to make at the end of the month? Because if you haven't, I think you might be surprised. I genuinely think you might be surprised at finding out how much money you're going to be left with at the end of the month once you see a promotion. Now, once you see a promotion, I want you to ask the question again, how long is it going to take for you to see another promotion? And then do the working out, and then see how long it's going to take for the third promotion. Once you do all these working outs, I think you'll be quite surprised in understanding that working a job and trying to go through it by promotions, it won't make sense, because inshallah, your family's going to grow, you're going to have kids, you're going to have a wife, and therefore you're going to have to spend a lot more money than you do currently. And in that situation, you're going to hope and wish that you started something for yourself.